When Lieutenant Viara Takan opened her eyes, the sterile glow of the medbay lights felt like knives. Her head pulsed with the rhythm of thruster engines, and every nerve under her blue-tinted skin tingled with feverish heat. The last thing she remembered was laughing with her human crewmates after a successful patrol, sharing toasts of something amber and deceptively mild they called whiskey. Now the air smelled of disinfectant and ion metal. Dr. Seamers, the ship's veteran medic, hovered beside her bunk. Worry, carving deeper lines into his weathered face. "Welcome back. Lieutenant, stay still. Your vitals are off the charts." "What happened?" Her voice came out cracked. "Did we take damage?" "Only to your biochemistry," Seamers said. "The enhancement serum every officer receives. It boosts reflexes and endurance. Combined with human alcohol, it triggered, let's call it a massive endocrine surge." Viara pressed trembling fingers to the side of her neck, feeling the furious thrum of her pulse. "Surge, you mean poisoning?" "Not exactly." The doctor hesitated, eyes flicking toward the third, iridescent eye that marked her as Orlin. "Your body thinks you're in a combat mating response. Energy redirection. Accelerated healing. Hyperadrenal output. It's tearing through your reserves. If we don't stabilize you, your heart could burn itself out." She forced a bitter laugh. "So I survive orbital firefights, only to be undone by a Terran happy hour." Seamers offered a faint smile. "You're the first Orlin ever to serve on a mixed-species ship. We're all still learning how our medicines interact. For now, rest and hydration. I'll start a neural coolant drip." When he turned away, Viara caught her reflection in the polished panel beside the bed, eyes glowing brighter than normal. Skin luminescent with overcharged cells. She looked alien even to herself. A single thought struck her with humiliating clarity if this reached Fleet Command. They'd ground her. The Orlin Expeditionary Council had fought for years to prove their people could serve alongside humans. A scandal about biological instability would set them back decades. Seamers finished adjusting the drip. "You may feel agitation. Emotional spikes." Even he cleared his throat. "An increased need for contact. Try to focus on breathing exercises. I'll monitor from the station." The doors hissed open before Viara could reply. Captain Jim Matt stepped in, still in duty blacks, the silver insignia on his collar gleaming. "Doc said you were awake." Concern softened the usual command steel in his voice. "You scared the hell out of us." "Lieutenant, I'm fine," she lied, forcing herself upright. The pulse monitor disagreed, chirping protest. Jim folded his arms. "You don't look fine. I've seen rookies after atmospheric burns with steadier hands." Her pride flared hotter than the fever. "Permission to return to quarters." "See you. I can manage this privately." Seamers interjected gently. "Captain, she needs rest under supervision. The reaction isn't contagious, but her vitals are volatile." Jim frowned. "Then move her to private recovery. Full privacy mode." To Viara, he added quietly, "You're part of this crew. Not a lab specimen. Let us help." Something in his tone steady, kind, infuriatingly human made her throat tighten. "Understood, Captain." He lingered a moment longer, studying her face. "We'll postpone the fleet report until you're back on your feet. No one outside needs details." After he left, Seamers raised an eyebrow. "You've got a good commander there." "Too good," Viara murmured. The heat beneath her skin refused to fade. She closed her eyes, concentrating on the rhythmic hum of the life support vents. Her people had meditation forms for balance, envisioned cold stars. Slow heart, Still mind. She tried. But flashes of memory intruded Jim's hand, steadying her on the gunnery deck. Last mission. His dry laugh during after-action briefings. The biochemical storm twisted admiration into something dangerously closer to longing. Hours crawled by. She drifted between half-dreams of her homeworld's silver seas and the dull ache spreading through her limbs. Once, she thought she heard the whisper of her mother's voice, reminding her of the Orlan Creed. Master the fire. Or the fire masters you. When she woke again, Seamers was asleep in his chair. Datapad balanced on his chest. The medbay lights had dimmed to night mode. Viara slipped the monitor leads from her wrist. Her strength had returned enough for stealth. And humiliation still burned brighter than the fever. She would not lie helpless under observation, while Fleet Med logs recorded every pulse spike. Quietly. She donned a spare uniform tunic from the storage locker and stepped into the corridor. The ship at night felt different, humming, alive. Yet in Sameta, crew on skeleton shift moved like ghosts through the glow strips. She nodded to a passing ensign who saluted sleepily. None, the wiser that their senior xenobiologist was technically on medical hold. Her quarters were 3 decks below. By the time she reached them, sweat slicked her palms, and the heat had returned. Pulsing, like a second heartbeat, she collapsed into the small chair by the viewport, watching distant star lines stretch across the dark. Control, she whispered, as if the word itself could slow her pulse. The door chime startled her. Lieutenant, Takshan, it's Captain Matt. Doc said you might be awake. I wanted to check in. She hesitated, torn between pride and the comfort that voice promised. I'm fine. Captain? Just tired. You sound like you're melting, he said wryly. Permission to override. Pause. Then the door slid open. Anyway, command override indeed. He stepped inside, taking in her flushed face. Trembling hands. The faint shimmer of heat distorting the air around her. That's not fatigue. Viara, talk to me. She managed a shaky laugh. The doctor calls it a metabolic storm. I call it mortifying. He knelt beside her chair, searching her eyes. You're not alone in this. We'll handle it scientifically. Whatever you need, rest. Cold packs. Distraction. Say the word. That offer, simple and genuine, cracked the shell of her composure. You shouldn't be near me, she whispered. My body's reacting to everything. Every sound. Every scent. He raised both hands, palms outward. Then I'll stand right here and keep watch from a safe distance. For a long moment, neither spoke. The steady thrum of the ship filled the silence. A heartbeat larger than both of them. Finally, Viara exhaled and nodded. All right, Captain. But if Fleet Command ever learns how their protocols nearly cooked one of their own officers, they won't. Jim promised. I'll deal with command politics. You focus on recovery. When he left, the door sealed softly behind him, leaving Viara in the dim light and the faint scent of ozone that always clung to his uniform. She leaned her head back, forcing slow breaths until the fever ebbed to a tolerable warmth. Outside the viewport, a comet's tail drifted past Brilliant. Fleeting. Uncontrolled. She smiled grimly at the irony. Control was the Orlan Creed. But maybe survival sometimes meant trusting others to steady you. For the first time since waking, she felt the faintest hint of calm. Tomorrow, she decided, she'd face whatever this was with dignity. Discipline. And perhaps a little help from a very stubborn human captain. The first sign that Viara's crisis wasn't a closed loop came just before morning watch, when a helmsman reported mild tremors and trouble filtering noise symptoms. Seamers had logged in Viara's chart. By the end of the hour, 3 more crew in unrelated sections had arrived at medbay, each complaining of agitation and skewed sensory input. None had touched whiskey. All had interacted with Viara, or with someone who had helped move her from medbay to private recovery. Seamers ran the numbers twice, then a third time, muttering as he overlaid bioscans with security corridor footage and duty rosters. He paged the captain with a single sentence. "We've got pattern on the bridge." The glow of navigation screens painted Jim Matt's face, the color of old steel. In English, "Doc, the enhancement serum mutated inside an Oralin host. It's not a pathogen, but the hormonal cascade has become mimetic transmissible through ordinary, close proximity contact that entrains sympathetic responses. Think of it as a feedback loop, not a virus. The more stressed a section is, the more it amplifies." He didn't add what the graphs implied left unchecked. The ship would drift from disciplined focus to a jittering, impulsive haze. Jim turned to the XO. "Quarantine, by workflow. Not fear. Break into microshifts. No section larger than 5 on the same deck. Autopilot nav routines for the next 12 hours. Lock known essential doors. Nobody plays hero." The orders rippled outward, transforming the ship's routines within minutes. Deck 7's Corridor Chess Club messaged each other with jokes about playing by hologram. The galley chief packed bento-style trays and slid them into delivery drones. Over the general channel, the comms officer's normally crisp updates softened to a warm check-in cadence. "Good morning. Crew of the Ardent. Hydration reminder. If you feel off kilter, breathe in on 4. Out on 6. Your ship has you." Viara insisted on returning to medbay voluntarily. "If I'm the loudest drum in this cascade, put me where the metronome lives," she told Seamers, settling on a biobed and threading her fingers together to hide their tremor. "Run whatever protocols you need. Just let me help interpret the scans. Oralin endocrinology doesn't map cleanly to human baselines." Seamers handed her a slate. "Partnered it is." His voice dropped. "I've put a soft flag on your file. Restricted access. If Fleet pulls my logs, they'll see aggregate data. Not your name." She lifted her gaze. "Thank you." By second watch, a tug-of-war had begun between medicine and mission. An encrypted channel chimed with the cool voice of Commodore Arell from Sector Command. "Captain Matt, your patrol window closes in 36 hours. Your presence along the Galdorn corridor is a political guarantee. Fleet can't afford a missed sweep after last month's freighter hijacks." Jim didn't blink. "Our ship is experiencing a cross-species medical anomaly. We're stabilizing. I'll report a new timetable when it's safe." "Safety," Arell said, "is also a matter of perception. If you declare medical emergency, the press will sniff it out. We will field questions about experimental serums and mixed crews. Do you understand me?" "Captain, I understand perfectly," he said, and ended the call before his temper galloped into insubordination. He went straight to records. "XO, start a shadow log. Every procurement memo. Waiver clause. Test result. Since the enhancement serum's rollout. Timestamp everything. If a tribunal comes, we won't come empty-handed." The XO's mouth twitched, somewhere between pride and dread. "I see you." In medbay, Viara traced luminous spikes across the hollow like a cartographer counting mountain ranges. "The cascade isn't random," she said. "Excitement, edging here, exhaustion. It resonates with circadian stress. Sections spike just before handoff. And, look here, this ridge coincides with Fleet's pep talk. Seamers whistled. So, external pressure worsens internal feedback. Not pressure, she corrected softly. Uncertainty about control. When we feel we can't choose, the storm gets louder. He folded his arms. I've been a medic 20 years. Never had a patient hand me a sociological variable, like it was a lab reagent. Arouses trained for triocular integration, she said, tapping her third eye with wry humor. Body, mind, context. If you ignore anyone, the others compensate badly. They built a plan around that insight. The bridge staggered shift turnovers to eliminate those tense clumps at the start and end of watches. Jim recorded a short, unpolished message and pushed it shipwide. I'm choosing you over a schedule. You have my word. The galley added a broth bar near two high-traffic junctions. The steam and spice, an old spacer trick for grounding frayed nerves. A petty officer taped hand-drawn stars above the gravlift with a scribble, still navigating. Stylus. For a few hours, the ship breathed easier. Vitals stabilized. The helmsman who'd first reported tremors sent a sheepish note to medbay. Hands steady now. Sorry for the scare. Viara allowed herself a half smile and, for the first time since waking, a full glass of water without nausea. Then Deck 3 lit up like a flare. A systems maintenance team, short on sleep and long on pride, tried to swap a thermal regulator without requesting a second pair of eyes. When the regulator jammed, voices sharpened, posture stiffened, and the cascade pounced 3 techs in a microclimate of urgency, amplifying each other's impatience. They didn't fight. Instead, they began talking too fast, skipping checklists, reaching for the wrong tools with confident hands. The alarm brought security and Seamers at a run. Viada, pale but steady, followed with a portable monitor clamped to her arm. Nobody shout, she warned at the threshold. Speak slow. Count as you talk. It felt ridiculous, like diffusing a bomb with a lullaby. But it worked. As the room's voices slowed, so did the tech's respirations. Seamers slipped a cool pack against a neck, guided a hand back to a checklist. 10 minutes later, the regulator slid into place with a quiet click. Anticlimax, blooming into shaky laughter. Lesson learned, the lead tech said. Cheeks thread. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Back in medbay, Viera hit the chair before her knees did. The room swam gently. Seamers frowned at her vitals. Your waveform's widening again. Because it's me, she said simply. I'm the drum. Remember. He took a breath, sank into his own chair, and dragged a hand across his face. Then I need to say the thing I don't want to say. If you go into stasis, we can lower ship-wide resonance by 30%. It buys us time to find a biochemical fix. She stared at the medbay ceiling, counting the thin hairline crack that ran from light to air, vent a map she'd memorized hours ago. And if I don't, 72 hours until systems fail by 1,000 paper cuts. People won't be reckless. They'll be too certain. That's when we break things. Silence stretched. Footsteps murmured in the hall. Somewhere, a drone hummed past with soup and rolls, the scent of cumin chasing it like a friendly ghost. It feels like exile, Viara said at last. Oral and vows bind us to remain present in the hard parts. Seamers angled his chair to face her fully. Presence can be a strategy, not a location. She huffed a laugh that wasn't quite one. Did you learn that in med school? In the university? He said. Twins with fevers. The bravest thing we did was put one in a cool room and one in arms. Both got well because we stopped pretending the same treatment fits everyone. She studied him. Then the halo of the portable monitor. If I agree. I want conditions. Name them. Full sensory isolation. But keep auditory feed for ship status. 1 ping an hour. No fleet access to raw data. And, she hesitated. Captain Matt reads the pings. Seymour's eyes warmed. Done. Done. And done. I'll fight like hell to protect your file. When Jim arrived, he didn't argue. He didn't ask if there was another way. He only listened. Jaw tight. As Viara laid out the parameters. Your choice, he said. Voice low. I hate it. I respect it. She sat up a little straighter. Before I go under, there's a line of inquiry I want to try. She pulled up a rendering of molecular chains. The enhancement serum's tidy helix, now bristling with Orlin sidebands. If we can find an unmutated core and reintroduce it at the right point, like a tuning fork to reset a piano string, we might collapse the cascade. Seymour's leaned in. Risk. Unknown. But if I'm in stasis, you can't consult me on the fly. Her 3 eyes met his 2. So we sketch it now. For an hour, they worked like clockmakers. Viera annotating the map of her own biology, while Seymour's lined up feasible compounds and safety rails. Jim stood aside and didn't pretend to understand the chemistry. He memorized the shape of their focus. The way Viera's mouth quirked when she found a cleaner path. The way Seymour's softened his voice when caution mattered. When the plan existed in 3 versions, ideal. Conservative. Desperate, Viera slid from the chair to the biobed. I'll see you after the snow, she said, using the Orlin idiom for stasis. Jim tried to anchor his voice. I'll read your pings. 1 an hour. Read them out loud, she said, a small smile tugging. Ships, listen. The stasis canopy lowered, shading her features in pale frostlight. Seymour's checked seals, then stepped back. Viera's breath slowed. The luminous flare behind her eyes, dimming to a calm. Steady, Amber. Outside. The Arden kept moving quieter now, as if not to wake her. The XO ran drills in whispers. The galley taped a new sign over the broth bar. Slow as smooth. Someone added a doodle of a comet with a smile. On Jim's console, the first hourly ping arrived, a soft chime and a line of text. System generated from medbay. Vital steady. Crew stable. He read it aloud to the empty bridge. Vital steady. Crew stable. The ship, very gently, seemed to hum in agreement. 3 days passed in silence. Viera slept in her crystalline capsule, suspended between heartbeat and dream. Outside her glass shell, the Arden drifted in low power mode, a warship hushed to a whisper. To the crew, it felt less like orbit and more like holding their breath. Captain Jim Matt had stopped pretending to sleep after the 2nd day. Every hour, the medbay sent its tranquil report. Vitals steady. Crew stable. He read each one aloud. As promised, it became a kind of ritual. A way to remind the Ardent she still had a heart. But by the 73rd hour, the word stable felt fragile. The cascade wasn't growing. Yet it wasn't dying either. Small lapses slipped through a junior navigator who became convinced the stars were shimmering wrong, 2 engineers who reconfigured a perfectly fine coolant manifold because it looked misaligned. Tiny acts of misplaced certainty, each corrected before harm, but each tightening the coil of dread in Jim's chest. Doctor. Seymour's didn't hide his exhaustion when he paged the captain. Her levels are dropping, but too slowly. The cascade has nested in the ship's rhythm sleep cycles. Calm traffic. Even how people breathe together in the corridors. She gave us time. Jim. But not a cure. Then we find one. Jim scrubbed a hand over his face. You said something about reintroducing the unmutated serum core. Seamers nodded toward a rack of vials. I synthesized a clean sample from pre-mission stores. In theory, injecting it into the original host, Viara could reset the biochemical chain. But the mutation is integrated with her neurostructure now. We'd be asking her body to fight itself. In theory, Jim repeated. Meaning you're guessing. I prefer educated hypothesis. The captain paced the medbay. Boots, echoing softly. If it's our only chance, we'll give her that choice when she wakes. A voice crackled through the Commodore Arrel again. Clipped and cold. Captain Matt, your ship's anomaly report is causing quite a stir at fleet. High Command wants an explanation for why you've suspended patrol without authorization. Jim's jaw set. Because I refuse to turn a medical emergency into a headline. Your refusal, Arrel said, is already a headline. The Council's auditors are reviewing the Orellan enhancement program. Someone will take the fall. Captain, if it's your alien officer. Fleet saves face. Jim stopped pacing. If you're suggesting I let them scapegoat, Lieutenant Tacken, I'm suggesting you be practical. Arrel interrupted. Send a report naming her physiology as the catalyst. Frame it as a tragic incompatibility. Not a procedural failure. Do that. And your command record stays untarnished. The channel went dead before he could reply. The silence that followed was colder than vacuum. Seamers broke it quietly. You're gonna fight them. Aren't you? Jim looked at the stasis capsule. Frost crystals clung to its edges, like stars caught mid-birth. She trusted me to read her heartbeat out loud. I'm not about to let them write her epitaph instead. Hours later, the ship entered a gentle rotation to simulate daybreak. Seamers adjusted the canopy's transparency, flooding the medbay with soft amber light. Her metabolic rate stabilized enough for safe revival. He said, if we're going to try the reintroduction, now's the window. Jim watched as Seamers keyed in the sequence. The frost on the glass began to thaw. Beneath it, Beata stirred slowly. As though surfacing from a long dive, her third eye flickered open first. Then the other two, for a heartbeat. Confusion shadowed her features. Then she recognized them both and exhaled. Voice, rough as sand. How long? 3 weeks. Seamers said softly. You bought us time. Lieutenant, now we need you to buy us a future. She sat up, muscles trembling with disuse. What's the status? The cascade spread through most of the crew. Jim said, no casualties. But discipline's fraying. You're our key to stopping it. Viara looked from one man to the other. Tell me the plan. Seamers explained the theory a dose of the unmutated serum could overwrite the mutation, realigning the biochemical rhythm she had disrupted. High risk. Possible organ failure. No guarantees. She listened without flinching. Do it. Jim stepped forward. Viara. You don't have to. Yes. I do. She met his gaze squarely. You said once that command means standing where the risk is highest. This is my turn. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jim nodded once. Understood. Seamers prepped the injector. The liquid inside shimmered faintly green, a color that seemed to hum with its own gravity. If it works, he said, you'll feel a cold rush. Then heat. Then silence. Viata extended her arm. Let's find the silence. The injector hissed. A jolt of icy fire ripped through her veins. She arched against the biobed, breath shuddering, 3 eyes blazing white. Seamers' monitors shrieked warnings. Jim gripped her shoulder. grounding her through the storm. Then, as suddenly as it began, the tremor stopped. The monitor steadied. Viara's breathing evened out. Sweat beaded her forehead, but her skin no longer shimmered with overcharge. Seamers leaned in, awe softening his voice. Vitals normal. Neural patterns stable. She did it. Viara sagged back against the pillows, tears cutting clean lines through the frost on her cheeks. Is it over? For you? Seamers said. For them, it's just beginning. We can synthesize a cure from your sample, but it'll take days. Then we'd better start now, she said, forcing a tired smile. The crews waited long enough. Word spread quietly. The lieutenant was awake, and the medbay was making progress. Crew from every deck sent small tokens patches, doodles, pieces of home planet candy. Someone even piped a gentle tune through the ship's intercom, a lullaby from the outer colonies. It drifted through the halls like an exhale. The ship hadn't dared release. When the last synthesis cycle began, Seamers finally slumped into a chair. 3 weeks of running on caffeine and adrenaline. He muttered, I think I'm turning into one of my own patients. Viara managed a weak laugh. Then, let me be your medic for once. Jim watched them both, the weight of command easing for the first time in days. Rest when it's done. Both of you. That's an order. Seamers nodded. We'll rest when the Ardent is cured. The lab lights dimmed to a twilight glow as the first batch of synthesized serum cooled. Outside, the ship drifted past a dying star, its crimson flare painting the hull with reflected fire. Jim stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back. You realize Fleet's going to bury this, he said quietly. They'll spin it as a technical malfunction, a clerical error, anything but a policy failure. Viara joined him, her voice low but steady. Then we keep our own record. Truth survives in stories. He looked down at her pale, exhausted, resolute. You saved this crew. Viara. She met his gaze, a faint, knowing smile in her eyes. We saved each other. Isn't that what a family does? He didn't answer right away. Outside, the star's last flare dimmed into the void. Somewhere deep in the ship, a soft chime signaled the first vial of antidote, ready for distribution. Jim's reply came as barely more than a whisper. Yeah, he said. A family. For the first time in nearly a month. Laughter echoed through the Ardent. It wasn't loud or careless, more like the sound of people remembering how to breathe. The medbay's bulkhead doors stayed open now, a quiet symbol that the danger had passed. Crew wandered in with mugs of broth and shy smiles, volunteering to help distribute doses of the synthesized serum. Viara stood beside Dr. Seamers, guiding each injection, checking vitals, and reminding herself that the calm she felt wasn't just the drug working, it was peace earned. The hum beneath her skin had softened to something almost musical, a steady rhythm that matched the ship's pulse. Jim Matt entered last. As always, never one to claim relief before his crew. His uniform was wrinkled, his eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. But when he saw Viara moving among her people steady, alive, calm, he exhaled, for what felt like the first time since the crisis began. You did it, he said, voice soft enough that only she heard. We did it. She wanted to correct, but her throat closed before the words could form. Instead, she smiled a quiet, tired thing that carried more truth than any speech could. Seamers cleared his throat. Captain, Lieutenant, once the doses circulate, we'll need full psychological debriefs. No one gets out of this without scars. Scars remind us we lived, Viaro said, fastening the seal on a med case. And that we learned. 2 days later, the Fleet Tribunal convened via holochannel. The Ardent's mess hall became a courtroom, filled with the blue shimmer of remote avatars, admirals, scientists, politicians, all staring down from their distant towers. At the center stood Captain Matt and Lieutenant Taken. Uniforms pressed, faces composed. Arel's hologram appeared last. Immaculate as ever. Captain, Lieutenant Fleet Command requires your official report. Explain how an authorized enhancement serum destabilized an entire vessel. Jim's reply was measured but sharp. The serum was approved for human use without cross-species testing. Lieutenant Taken's exposure revealed a systemic oversight. We've submitted our logs, correspondence, and medical data. Arel's gaze flicked to Viara. And the lieutenant's role? Viara straightened. I volunteered for the Auralan Human Integration Program in good faith. The serum's instability was not an Auralan flaw. It was human arrogance, assuming one physiology fits all. Gasps rippled through the assembled holograms. Arel's image thinned to a cold smile. Careful, Lieutenant. Those words edged toward insubordination. Jim stepped forward, his voice calm but steel-edged. If truth counts as insubordination, Fleet needs to rethink its vocabulary. A low murmur swept the tribunal, some disapproval, some admiration. An older admiral silenced the channel with a raised hand. Enough. Captain Matt. Lieutenant Taken, your testimony is noted. The Council will review your findings. Pending that, the enhancement program is suspended fleet-wide. And just like that, the avatars dissolved, leaving the mess hall empty, except for 2 breathing silhouettes and the echo of their defiance. That night, the Ardent floated in silence. Engines idling. Lights dimmed to a twilight gold. Crew slept in bunks, exhausted but unburdened. In the observation deck, Viara stood alone before the window, watching the slow spin of nebula dust. She heard the soft hiss of the door and didn't turn. You should be asleep, Captain. Jim's reflection joined hers in the glass tall. Tired. Hands shoved into his pockets. Can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see tribunal forms and fleet logos. Occupational hazard. She smiled faintly. You handled yourself well today. So did you, he said. You spoke truth they didn't want to hear. Her third eye blinked open, luminous in the dark. Truth isn't optional. It's oxygen. He watched her for a long moment, then asked quietly, Do you regret it, joining a human crew? Viara hesitated. A part of me feared it. Once. The jokes about my eyes, my blood, the way people flinch from the unknown. But then, she looked at him. Then I saw humans who didn't flinch, who stood beside me, not behind. Jim met her chase, steady and unguarded. We've been through worse wars with less unity. You changed this ship. Viara. She shook her head. No, Captain. We changed each other. The air between them was gentle, charged with something that wasn't duty anymore. Not the feverish pull of the serum, but something quieter. Deliberate, a connection chosen, not forced. Jim reached into his pocket and drew out a small insignia patch, the Ardent's crest. Its stars newly embroidered with a faint Auralan silver thread. The crew had this made, he said, placing it in her palm. Said you earned your own constellation. Viara traced the stitching with her thumb. A symbol of survival, of family, he said simply. For a moment, The ache of everything they'd endured seemed to dissolve in the soft hum of the ship around them. "Do you think Fleet will learn anything from this?" she asked. Jim shrugged. "Bureaucracies move slower than light. But the Ardent will remember. That's enough for me." Viera smiled. "Small but sure. For me too." The nebula outside shimmered a slow, living aurora. Jim turned to go, but paused at the doorway. "You know," he said, half teasing, half tender, "if the Council demands another Orellan liaison, I'm putting in a recommendation." "Careful," she said, laughter dancing in her eyes. "You might end up with two of us." He grinned, the weariness in his face softening into something human again. Could be worse. When he left, Viera stayed by the window, watching starlight scatter across her reflection. Her three eyes met themselves in the glass, one for what she'd been, one for what she'd lost, and one for what she was becoming. A survivor, a scientist, a bridge between worlds. Bedomtsikle. Seamers had finished compiling his report. He found Viera still at the viewport, a half-empty cup of tea at her elbow. Fleet sent their verdict. He said, "Official cause, biochemical incompatibility. Unofficially, your data just rewrote the medical manual on interspecies enhancement therapy." Viera arched an eyebrow. "So bureaucracy yields progress after all." He chuckled. "Eventually. How's the captain?" "Sleeping." "Finally. I ordered it." Seamers smirked. "You're the only one aboard who can." "Don't tell him that." "He won't." He hesitated. "You saved us." "Lieutenant. Not just medically, morally. People needed to see that courage doesn't always wear command stripes." She looked at him, eyes glimmering. "Courage wears whatever fits." "Doctor." The crew gathered one last time in the mess hall for a quiet toast. Not of whiskey this time, but Orellan tea. Brewed from herbs Viera had cultivated in the Botany Bay. The steam rose in pale blue curls, fragrant and calming. "To survival," the XO said. "To unity," added Seamers. Jim lifted his cup, eyes on Viera. "To family." Their cups clinked softly. And for the first time since the Ardent had entered the crisis, everyone felt whole. The Ardent sailed through the rim of the Kesson Nebula, her hull catching streaks of violet light that made the ship look alive, breathing, pulsing, healed. On the bridge, the hum of engines blended with low conversation. The crew had returned to their rhythm's laughter at the navigation console. Quiet banter between engineering and communications. The rustle of routine after long chaos. A new sign hung beside the main galley hatch, hand-lettered on a piece of repurposed hull plating. "Rule cancelletuno. No experimental cocktails." Rule #2. If Rule #1 is broken, tell the doctor first. Someone had drawn a cartoon of Dr. Seamers underneath, arms crossed, rolling his eyes. The crew loved it. Seamers pretended not to. Viera moved through the corridors. Hair steps lighter now, uniform crisp and unrumpled. As she passed, crew members smiled, offering nods that held quiet gratitude rather than pity. She'd earned her place not as a token, Orellan, but as one of them. In the medbay, new diagnostic modules glowed along the walls, her designs, built to detect cross-species anomalies before they could spiral into crises. The ship's registry now bore an addendum hybrid crew certified. It was a bureaucratic label. Perhaps, but it carried weight. Seamers was hunched over a console, muttering at a dataset. "Every time I think I'm done with reports, Command invents another form." Viera leaned against the doorway. That's how they make sure you'll never retire. He snorted. Not before you make captain. Lieutenant. She laughed softly. Careful, or the rumor will spread. Too late, he said, without looking up. On deck 3. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. The galley chief had resurrected an old Earth recipe, a gesture of thanks to the crew that had kept each other sane. Around the tables, people swapped stories of near misses, shared photos of loved ones, and compared scars like badges of honor. Jim Matt entered quietly, hands clasped behind his back, surveying the scene with the faint, private smile of a man who had nearly lost everything and gained something deeper instead. When Viara spotted him, she waved him over. Captain Care to sample non-lethal human cuisine. He raised an eyebrow. Is that a guarantee or an experiment? Statistically safer than whiskey. He took a bite of bread and closed his eyes as if testing for hidden toxins. Not bad, he admitted. Almost edible. The crew laughed, the sound bright and effortless. For a moment, the memory of tribunal halls and sterile med bays seemed light years away. Weeks later, the Ardent docked at the massive spire station of Port Meridian, gleaming above the planet's rings like a cathedral of glass and steel. Fleet banners lined the docking bay. But instead of ceremony, the crew was greeted by something rarer, quiet, respect. Word of the Ardent's crisis, and the way its captain and crew had handled it, had spread through unofficial channels. Other officers stopped by their berth with cautious questions, seeking templates for mixed species readiness, cross-biochemical protocol, and team dynamics under duress. Viara spent her first morning planetside lecturing at the Fleet Academy's Medical Corps. Her presentation title drew a small smile from the crowd. Harmony Under Pressure Lessons, from the Edge. She spoke not just of formulas and neural resonance, but of empathy, and the strength that comes from refusing to treat diversity as danger. By the end, the young cadets were silent, not from boredom, but from thought. Later, when she stepped outside into the station's viewing promenade, Jim was waiting. He held a small silver case in one hand. What's this? She asked. Fleet commendation, he said, passing it over. For distinguished service in crisis. She opened it. Inside was a crystal insignia, shaped like a spiral nebula, its core engraved with both their names. Her voice softened. They finally gave us a medal for doing the right thing. Jim smiled faintly. Don't get used to it. She laughed, then turned toward the viewport. Do you ever wonder if the universe pays attention to our tiny dramas? Only when we shout loud enough, he said. Their reflections hung side by side in the glass. 2 species. 2 lives. Linked not by blood or biology, but by choice. That evening, the Ardent's crew gathered again, not for a mission, not for a briefing, but for what the XO called regrounding. The mess hall lights dimmed, and a low hum filled the air as Viara set a small Orellan ritual lamp at the center table. Its light flickered in 3 colors: green for peace, gold for courage, blue for memory. This is an Orellan vow rite, she explained softly. It's not about religion. It's about gratitude to the ones who held the line when we could not. She glanced toward Jim. Each color burns for something we wish to carry forward. Crew members lined up, one by one, whispering what they wanted to remember. Seamers, said Patience. The helmsman murmured trust. The XO simply said, slow is smooth. When Jim's turn came, he paused before the flame, then said, family. Viara's smile wavered, then steadied. A perfect word. At last, when the lamp burned low, They stood together, watching the colors fade into white. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of shared history, resilience, and quiet love. Later, in the observation deck, Viara and Jim stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the nebula's light ripple across the hull. "So what now?" she asked. "Now," he said, half smiling. "Now we explore. The universe isn't going to run out of trouble anytime soon." "Or wonder," she added. He nodded. "Or wonder." She looked at him, her 3 eyes reflecting the starlight. "You realize, Captain, we're no longer just explorers. We're proof." "Proof of what?" "That humans and Orolans and maybe anyone can be more together than apart." Jim's grin was small but certain. "I'll put that in the next mission log." They stood in silence as the Ardent turned toward open space. Engines igniting with a gentle roar. Stars stretched into lines. The nebula's glow fell away behind them. And the black ahead was infinite. Inviting. Alive. Viera's hand brushed against Jim's on the railing, not by accident this time. He didn't move it. "Ready?" she asked. "Always," he said. And together, they watched the stars open before them. The Ardent, cutting a steady path through the endless dark. A ship reborn. Crew united. Love tempered in the fires of survival. The universe, vast and indifferent, shone quietly on.